Tonight, the Conservatives face questions and criticism about their campaign.
I think the Conservatives are in a lot of trouble right now.
Insiders sound the alarm to CBC News over sliding polls and not enough focus on Donald Trump. Ice blankets swaths of Ontario.
We're getting calls about people who are getting injured from falling trees.
Roads treacherous, slick sidewalks, and hundreds of thousands without power. An Ontario judge slams WestJet for insisting a passenger sign a non-disclosure agreement to get a refund.
This defying silence has to stop.
Go Public has a landmark decision for passenger rights.
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian Henemansing.
Tonight, the Conservative leader is facing questions about his campaign's direction and message. Conservative sources both inside and outside the campaign telling CBC News this weekend the campaign is disorganized, dysfunctional, and resistant to change. Speaking on condition of anonymity, more than half a dozen Conservatives blame leader Pierre Poilievre's tight inner circle. Others warn there's a lack of focus on the central question of this election: which leader will voters trust to deal with the U.S. president's threat? An issue which will only grow as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs are expected to arrive this Wednesday. JP Tasker covered the Conservatives on the campaign trail during the first week. He brings us the new complaints and how the leader responded.
Can't wait. Yes.
It's all smiles in front of the cameras. And there have been huge crowds at Conservative rallies.
Amazing. Wow.
But according to Conservative sources, the party's campaign is in disarray a week into the federal election. More than half a dozen insiders speaking to CBC News describe the operation as dysfunctional and a mess, with tempers flaring at party headquarters.
We cannot allow the Liberals a fourth term in office.
Asked Sunday by reporters if his campaign is missing the mark, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre talked about the risk of re-electing the Liberals instead.
President Trump has said he wants the Liberals back in power. We know why, because they will keep Canada weak.
Sources say Poilievre's top advisor, Jenny Byrne, has dropped the ball on campaign staffing, and she doesn't have a clear plan to get Poilievre back in the lead, as polls show the Conservatives are still trailing the Liberals.
I think the Conservatives are in a lot of trouble right now.
Senior Conservative strategist Corey Tonight just helped Ontario Premier Doug Ford win big. Now he's going public with his concerns, saying Poilievre needs to better address U.S. President Donald Trump and his economic threats.
I think they have an opportunity to pivot and retool their campaign in a way that gets them focused on what I think most Canadians are voting on, which is Trump.
Tonight argues Poilievre sounds too much like the U.S. president.
Less name-calling and sloganeering and talking about one's big, beautiful, bring-it-home tax cut. You know, it all sounds a little too Trumpy for a lot of the voters.
Poilievre's opponents see an opening amid reports the campaign has gone awry.
Their campaign is kind of falling apart. They're fighting each other in their campaign office.
But not all Conservatives agree, pointing to those large, enthusiastic rallies. And the party's Quebec lieutenant says things are fine.
We have a good team, a great team. We work every day. We go door knocking, and I don't have any tension.
Despite calls for a change in tone, a Conservative source tells me the campaign is not planning to pivot to a full-on Trump assault. Poilievre will instead focus on trying to tear down Liberal leader Mark Carney to win back voters.
And JP, there may be somebody wondering what's motivating Conservative sources to speak to you now.
Well, some Conservatives genuinely want to see a campaign shift. They're trying to spur change and force Poilievre to be more positive in his messaging and clear-eyed about the Trump threat. For others, it's about score settling. There is tension between the federal Conservatives and the Ontario PCs. One source described it as a civil war. And lastly, some sources just want to make their views known now before a potential loss so they can have their I told you so moment. Ian?
JP Tasker in Ottawa tonight. Poilievre announced a tax break for investors today.
We are standing up to the Americans with a Canada First reinvestment tax cut that will bring tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of investment into our economy.
Pierre Poilievre says a Conservative government will temporarily cut the capital gains tax for investors who sell an asset and then reinvest the proceeds in a Canadian company. The Conservatives say the plan would run to the end of 2026 and cost about $5 billion a year.
It's never been done before, but if we can give loans to large, wealthy developers to buy buildings, to buy homes, why can't we give everyday families a break? Why can't we help out everyday families buying their first home?
In British Columbia, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh made his pitch to first-time home buyers. The plan would allow people who qualify for a mortgage to apply for low-interest loans from the federal government. Full details will be unveiled when the party platform is released.
So we owe them at least to make them certain that their purchase power is protected.
The Bloc leader spent his day east of Montreal with a focus on helping seniors. Among the pledges from Yves-François Blanchet are plans to make it easier for seniors to file a tax return and a tax credit for energy-efficient renovations to multi-generational homes. Liberal leader Mark Carney didn't hold any public events today. Donald Trump is sure to remain an issue on the campaign trail this week as sweeping tariffs are set to kick in on Wednesday. Tonight, the White House is dismissing concerns that auto tariffs will increase car prices for Americans. Sarah Levitt now with how Canada is pushing back.
It's a constant catchphrase.
Tariffs will make America great again.
From a Trump administration steadfast on slapping tariffs, arguing it will bolster American production. This after U.S. President Donald Trump dismissed concerns that car prices will rise if he follows through with 25% tariffs on imported vehicles. In a phone interview with NBC News, he said, "I couldn't care less. I hope auto companies raise their prices because if they do, people are going to buy American-made cars." Trump is calling April 2nd Liberation Day, highlighting the auto tariffs and 25% across-the-board tariffs on Mexico and Canada. It's also when U.S. reciprocal tariffs are set to be announced on a slew of other nations.
Tariffs are tax cuts. Tariffs are jobs. Tariffs are national security. Tariffs are great.
That message, though, disputed by Ottawa with these ads on display across the U.S. Tariffs are a tax, brought to you by the Government of Canada.
And I think all Canadians have felt angry that what our nearest neighbor, what used to be our closest friends, were insulting our country.
There is optimism, though, after Prime Minister Mark Carney's phone call with Trump, one the president called extremely productive.
To hear the Prime Minister say that it looks like we will receive a favorable, if you can call it that, level of tariffs. We expect there to be tiers and for Canada to fall in the lowest level.
Tariffs are also coming to auto parts, which has that industry worried.
Our customers in the United States, or maybe a couple tiers down, are going to be forced with a decision. Is it worth it to source it from Canada still? So yeah, we'll definitely be losing business.
He says he's holding his breath, something many people are doing. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Washington.
Tonight, Trump is brushing aside another comment from that NBC interview that he wouldn't rule out another term as president.
I don't want to talk about a third term now because no matter how you look at it, we got a long time to go. We have a long time.
Trump told NBC he was not joking about another term, saying there are ways to make it happen. The U.S. Constitution bars someone from serving more than 2 terms. Changing it would require 2/3 of Congress or 3/4 of the states to ratify it. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith shot back at critics of her appearance in Florida alongside a conservative commentator who once called for a U.S. takeover of Canada. Smith says she was there to defend Canada, and Sam Sampson explains she claimed success.
What President Trump is doing with tariffs right now could be a massive mistake.
Ben Shapiro is one of the most popular conservative podcasters in the United States. In his latest episode, he criticizes U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policy.
They mean you are going to pay a higher price for your Hyundai, and the government is going to take a piece of that.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is taking credit for this message after speaking with Shapiro at a Florida fundraiser.
He devoted his entire podcast to talking about how terrible tariffs were for American businesses and for America and for North America. And that is exactly what we wanted to accomplish.
Shapiro's hour-long episode wasn't all about tariffs. And while commentators like him help set the conservative agenda, his influence has limits.
Trump seems pretty diehard in his support of tariffs as a policy tool, And I don't think one conservative influencer saying something else is going to necessarily affect that.
Smith has spent months meeting with U.S. lawmakers, once with Trump himself, to try and prevent tariffs. But she faced calls to cancel this latest appearance. A fundraiser for PragerU, a group that says it tries to combat woke themes and anti-American sentiment in schools.
Why is she going on those very controversial platforms? The work needs to be done in the White House.
I will not be silent.
Smith has also taken heat for an interview with American right-leaning media outlet Breitbart in early March, where she noted tariff talk was giving the Liberals a boost. She said she suggested to U.S. officials to pause it until after the election. But some say she's just advocating for Alberta.
Whether this will make any difference with tariffs on maple syrup or cars or something, who cares if you're an Albertan? What counts is oil and gas.
Smith teased on social media that she recorded at least one more interview with a right-wing commentator while in Florida. It's expected to be released in the near future. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
Some 400,000 people in Ontario are without power tonight. An ice storm brought down trees and power lines. Travel has become treacherous, and the storm is still packing a punch. Nicole Williams shows us the damage.
Parts of central and eastern Ontario have literally frozen over. Trees, roads, and power lines crusted over with layers of ice.
You see all those branches down around the car. He was on the other side of the car, scraping his windshield, and that thing came down and just smashed over top of the car.
On Sunday, more than 400,000 customers were without power.
We're seeing incredible images of trees down across roads. So those also need to be cleared in order for them to get to the customers.
Peterborough and several townships north of Toronto declaring states of emergency.
My mom's hasn't had power most of the day, all night.
Ontario Provincial Police responding to hundreds of weather-related reports since Friday.
We're getting calls about people who are getting injured from falling trees as they're out on their property looking at it. We're getting calls from people getting injured in motor vehicle collisions.
One in eastern Ontario sent 7 people to hospital, another killing a 33-year-old woman, though the exact cause is still under investigation.
This is one of the more extensive freezing rain disaster events that I've been through, and I've been through quite a few of them.
At Ottawa's International Airport, dozens of flights were delayed or canceled, stranding passengers in parts of the U.S. like Washington and Florida. And in the city, even the sidewalks weren't safe.
This storm is expected to continue moving east through Quebec and into the Maritimes. Officials are urging people to take extreme care and to stay off the roads if possible. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
There's a desperate search underway for survivors of the deadly earthquake that struck Myanmar and Thailand on Friday. The epicenter of the first quake, a 7.7 magnitude shock, was closest to Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city. The initial impact and smaller tremors since have also shook neighboring countries, Thailand, Bangladesh, India, Laos, and China. Salima Shivji is in Bangkok for us tonight, speaking with those hoping their loved ones buried in the debris can still be saved.
The scramble to rescue survivors. Every minute counts, with hundreds still trapped under rubble all over central Myanmar. This one a happy outcome. But many hundreds of others are still stuck deep under mounds of mangled concrete. And panic keeps striking in Mandalay, so close to the epicenter. A series of powerful aftershocks, including one registering at a 5.1 magnitude, briefly stalling rescue efforts. There's devastation everywhere. At this monastery, the earthquake demolished an entire wing where nearly 200 monks were writing an exam. Rescuers are using drastic means to get to whomever might still be alive. I can't describe how sad I feel, fellow monk Bone Tuta says. I'm at a loss when I see all this destruction. Foreign rescue teams are slowly getting into the country largely isolated from the world. But a severe lack of medical supplies and heavily damaged roads make progress difficult. And aid organizations are sounding the alarm.
What we're seeing here in Myanmar is a level of devastation that hasn't been seen over a century in Asia.
With the death toll already so high, projections show it could top 10,000 people. And the crucial window before rescue becomes recovery will close soon, experts say. In Bangkok, more than 1,000 kilometers from the epicenter, heavy machinery was brought in, where a high-rise under construction crumpled in seconds, trapping dozens of workers. Families wait and watch, helpless and exhausted. This family, 20 members strong, has been sleeping here since hours after the quake hit. Ganiga Numisi's husband Yotin was on the 24th floor, working as an electrician. I'll wait here as long as it takes until we find him, she says. Our youngest son asks where his daddy has gone. I tell him that Mummy will bring daddy home.
Salima, what's the latest on the rescue effort where you are?
Well, it's very much a race against the clock. We're soon to hit the 72-hour mark after the earthquake when survival rates dropped sharply. And in Myanmar, there are further complications. The country is in the grips of a civil war. The military junta, which seized power in 2021 and ousted a democratically elected government, controls less than a third of the country. And even after the quake hit, Myanmar residents reported that the military has continued to drop bombs on several rebel-held areas. And so this natural disaster, the worst the region has seen in a century, is compounding an already dire humanitarian crisis.
Salima Shibji in Bangkok tonight. WestJet has lost a legal battle after it tried to use a confidentiality clause when reimbursing a customer.
Finally, a judge calls out an airline for trying to gag passengers.
Why an Ottawa man refused to be silenced and how that could affect future court cases. It's Canadian music's night to shine. And I'm feeling the big winners and performances from the 2025 Junos. And a notable Goose returns to the wild. We're back in 2. Muslims around the world gathered for Eid al-Fitr, the festival marking the end of Ramadan, a time of prayer, feasting, and celebration, but in some places darkened by the shadow of war. In Gaza, prayers were held outside demolished mosques as some families buried loved ones killed in Israeli airstrikes. Now to a CBC News Go Public exclusive. WestJet has been penalized for attempting to silence a customer seeking compensation by insisting on a confidentiality clause. As Erica Johnson explains, the court ruling is being called a landmark decision for air passengers in this country.
So that's some merchandise I brought.
Andrew Douglas regularly flies to Cuba, bringing supplies to people in need. But 3 years ago, WestJet says he can't get on a plane, claiming, incorrectly, that he needs to show proof of a negative COVID test.
It just caught me completely off guard because I thought at first they were joking, right?
But he's not laughing when they turn him away, tell him no refund, just a WestJet credit.
I don't want flyer points. I am not flying WestJet again. So we could not agree.
He files a case in small claims court. In the months leading up to trial, WestJet makes numerous offers, inching up the dollar price each time, but always with a hitch, insisting he sign a confidentiality clause to get his money. So each time, Douglas refuses the deal.
It's not about the money. It's the point of the argument that this buying silence has to stop.
An Ontario judge has now agreed, calling WestJet's insistence on a confidentiality clause problematic and a serious defect, saying there should not be strings attached to receive a long overdue refund.
This is a landmark decision because finally a judge calls out an airline for trying to gag passengers. And finally, a judge says this is not right.
Lukács says he's seen numerous attempts by Canada's airlines to muzzle customers who just want what's owed. Now, he says, passengers can fight back.
And I really hope that this is going to go viral. Every passenger will have a copy there of this decision.
WestJet declined an interview request, refused to answer most of our written questions. In a statement, the airline told us confidentiality clauses are fundamental to making sure both sides can find common ground. WestJet wouldn't say whether it will now stop insisting on an NDA before giving a payout.
And so, Erica, why are people bringing this to court rather than filing a complaint with the regulator?
Well, Ian, that's because some cases like this one aren't covered by the regulator, but others want transparency. And that's because about a year and a half ago, the rules changed. So passengers who file a complaint with the CTA can no longer share their decision. So people can't find out key details about a case, like how much an airline may have paid out.
Erica Johnson in Vancouver. Our Go Public stories come from you, so if you have a tip for the team to investigate, send an email to gopublic@cbc.ca. And CBC's at the Junos in Vancouver tonight, hearing from the winners and bringing you the highlights. Eli Glasner on this big night for Canadian music. A record bird flu season in the U.S. is sparking concern in Canada.
Now that the birds are coming back north for the migration, we don't really know what's coming.
The race to prepare amid that uncertainty. A famed Canadian actor takes to the stage to take on cancel culture.
Isn't censoring a piece of art always more dangerous than staging it?
My conversation with Saul Rubinek. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next.
We are the greatest nation on earth. And we are not for sale.
Michael Bublé hosted the 2025 Juno Awards, that opening swelling with Canadian pride. And Eli Glasner is there, Rogers Arena in Vancouver. And Eli, walk us through the show.
Michael Bublé had told us in an earlier press conference that he wanted this Junos, and particularly the opening number, to really embrace the diversity of the Canadian music scene, and that is exactly what he did tonight. An amazing opening number with some of his own songs like Feeling Good, like Just Haven't Met You Yet, but then segueing into different genres, different languages, from Inuktitut to Punjabi, Maestro Fresh Rest, rapping at one point. So just a beautiful sonic spectrum that worked really quite well. Also, I have to shout out the Snotty Nose Res Kids. They made history last night, and that was when they became the first Indigenous group to take home the Rap Album Award. And they showed tonight in Vancouver why they are such a force on stage. An amazing performance with Tia Wood.
And you were speaking to lots of other Canadian artists. What were some of the highlights?
It has been an interesting weekend. Again and again, we have had music fans talking about how much Canadian music means to them in this music, but also talking to musicians about the difficult choices. They're certainly feeling that patriotic fever that we're seeing across the country, but a lot of bands are touring. We talked to Jim Cuddy, who penned this Elbows Up anthem, and talking about pulling back from America. But at the same time, other bands like Valley, that's not so easy. They have fans all across North America. We also had a chance to talk to the Beaches, who won again, winning a Group of the Year. Jordan Miller has already had one of those amazing Canadian moments when she sang the national anthem, talking to us about just what that felt like.
It was so exciting. I was really nervous because I'm not super good at the French version, but I didn't really have to be. It turned out because everybody sang so loud that I could barely hear myself. It feels really incredible to be a Canadian musician right now. I think a lot of us are feeling very proud of our country and of all the things that make us Canadian.
And certainly, if there was a drumbeat of the Junos tonight, it was that pride, the feeling of what being Canadian and what Canadian music can do to really capture this moment. Ian?
Can't believe I'm a few blocks away but can't be there. You're lucky. Eli Glasner in Vancouver. At the Junos Gala last night, a first in Canadian music, the award for Songwriter of the Year for a non-performing artist.
And the Juno goes to... Lowell!
Elizabeth Lowell Boland, known as Lowell, has long pushed for splitting the category into two after seeing the songwriting trophy consistently won by well-known performers.
I've been to the Junos maybe like 8 or 9 times, and every single time, a large proportion of the winners are kind of a result of the work that we've done. So it's really nice to just see, the song being celebrated.
Lowell, who was raised in Calgary, won the Juno for her work behind the scenes on albums by Beyoncé and the Canadian band The Beaches. Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Tonight, a Canadian legend takes to stage to dip into the public discourse as birds take flight north. Bird flu fears widen in this country. Bird flu has hit the U.S. hard, prompting mass cullings and an egg shortage that's pushed prices to record highs.
Now that the birds are coming back north for the migration, we don't really know what's coming.
With the epicenter just south of the border, we break down 4 things to watch for in this country. But first, award-winning Canadian actor Saul Rubinek, the son of Holocaust survivors, talks about how his art courts controversy, from anti-Semitism to cancel culture.
Isn't censoring a piece of art always more dangerous than staging it?
I sat down with him in Vancouver to talk about Playing Shylock, his solo show, and that Shakespearean character, Jewish moneylender, that many consider anti-Semitic. So the premise of Playing Shylock is that a Toronto theatre has canceled the Merchant of Venice after one performance.
There's obviously been pressure put on the board of directors of the theatre that this show should not go on at this time of rising anti-Semitism. And so it's been canceled.
Canceled. And I should have known. I should have known. The last time a Jew got this close to a cross, it did not end well.
I, as a character, go out there angry, frustrated, hurt, vulnerable, and confused and upset. And I talk about the history of the play, and I talk about why I absolutely do not think that this is an anti-Semitic character.
I didn't get a nose job or a new name. My parents did not survive the Holocaust so that I could erase myself.
How real does this premise feel to you?
Totally real. I believe that, first of all, the character is playing his father playing Shylock. Because my father was an actor in Yiddish theater in Poland, and I tell the audience my father always wanted to play Shylock, and Hitler stopped him. And so part of the reason I wanted to do it was to do it like my father would do it. So I was speaking like my father is speaking, and I am dressed like Orthodox clothing as Shylock. So I'm a very Jewish character.
So there are many layers to this play, many layers to your character. And cancel culture is only one of them. As a veteran of the arts, as a longtime actor, how do you feel about the state of the arts now and cancel culture?
Isn't it always more dangerous to censor a play? Isn't censoring a piece of art always more dangerous than staging it? No matter what its opinion is, these things need to be aired. I mean, this character of Shylock is a character that was a lightning rod for anti-Semitism for 400 years. Shouldn't we talk about that? Shouldn't we stage that? Shouldn't we have this discussion? There's a wonderful thing. My father once was, his father was an Orthodox man, and discovered that his son was an actor. And it was horrible for my Zeta, my grandfather. And he asked my father how he could do something so shameful, so indecent. And my father simply said, and I put this in the play, and he says to his own father, he's only 16, he says, people, if a theater is good, people see themselves. They see themselves on the stage. And they laugh and they cry, and for a few minutes each night, they don't feel so alone. And my Zeta, who had said to him, how can you go so far away from God? Listened to my father say that, and he said, well, maybe it's not so far away from God after all.
In the play, the fictional note written by the theater saying that this should be shut down, one of the reasons they cite is rising anti-Semitism. So let me ask you, this play was written before October 7th, but you have lived in Toronto for a long, long time. So put the current level of anti-Semitism in perspective.
Over 3,000 years?
No, over your 70 or 80 years.
You know, I'm a child of survivors. You know, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, and yeah, anti-Semitism. First of all, it's such an insanely general word. It is otherness and fear of otherness that we need to talk about. What we need to talk about is holding hands with everybody who feels that they are other, which is who, everybody? And when we try to separate and exclude and say, I'm boycotting this one little section here, I'm going to boycott this section, they're going to be excluded. We're going to accept them, but not you. What are we doing? What are we adding? I can only tell you it hasn't felt any different to me than it always has in terms of otherness. Actors have felt this forever.
You talked about the importance of the arts in dangerous times. So let me ask you about another set of headlines as we sit here on a beautiful day in Vancouver. Donald Trump, his constant threats of making Canada the 51st state, the tariff war. What do you make of all of that?
Mark Twain said, politicians and diapers need to be changed often and for the same reason. That's what I make of it.
There are a lot of people who are kind of reassessing and reaffirming and reinvigorating their Canadianness right now in the face of these threats, and people in the arts kind of stepping forward in different ways. Mike Myers has done elbows up a couple of times.
Well, Mike Myers is going on Saturday Night Live and playing Elon Musk and doing the right thing. Yeah. He's making fun of this stuff.
You know, I'm the president now, right? I'm kidding. Okay, maybe not.
Yeah. Whether it's against the left or the right. I mean, all this stuff needs to be made fun of. And humor is the great equalizer. The thing that most, you know what I'm frightened of, mostly?
I do not.
Certainty. My background tells me when people are certain about shit, the Jews are next, you know? Or the others are next, and I've got to run for the hills. So I am not inspired by political activism. Just not in my nature.
But I guess what I'm wondering is just to reflect for a moment, you know, as people are thinking more about Canadian things and buying Canadian, maybe watching Canadian, is there anything you want to weigh in on that?
I grew up in Montreal and Ottawa and Toronto, and it wasn't for, well, at that time, in the late 60s, where we had opportunities for youth and we had LIP grants and we had the beginning of the Canadian Culture Centres and the money that the Liberal governments, the real Trudeau, gave to the arts.
Jews are circumcised, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm twice as Jewish as you are. I've been circumcised twice.
Oh, I get it. My whole generation would not have been able to do English Canadian theatre, and I'm so proud of the fact that this country did that and supported that.
What am I going to tell the group? They thought they were working the O'Keefe Center. It turns out they're working the East End Community Center.
It's better, there's free parking.
We're living in different times now, but I'm still proud of that.
Though many people would argue that we've never seen the kind of rhetoric from a U.S. president that we're seeing right now, certainly in my lifetime.
All of these things are crazy, but all I can tell you is it's great opportunity. When times are this insane, you know, boy, yeah, the arts need to step up and talk about shit that matters, right?
Excellent. Real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
And so that play was staged in Toronto last year, and it's coming back starting this coming week, and continues to confront those images and also those issues that are very much in the headlines. The spread of bird flu to other animals has scientists concerned about the potential toll on humans.
It can change its genetic structure in a matter of days, if not even hours.
The global effort aimed at containing the virus. In the U.S., the highly contagious bird flu is at a dangerous point. And as birds begin migrating north for spring, there's a risk the spread could accelerate here in Canada.
A virus that respects no boundaries, it respects no borders, doesn't require a passport.
Jennifer Yoon breaks down 4 things experts are watching for as birds head north.
A record number of Americans getting sick with bird flu. Millions of birds sick or culled in the U.S. Egg prices skyrocketing and spillovers. Almost 1,000 dairy herds infected and 1 person dead.
It's been hard to keep up, but bird flu is at a dangerous point, and the epicenter at the moment is the United States. Here are 4 things you need to keep an eye on as birds start flying north for migration season. Number 1, watch how the virus is mutating.
Bird flu is still very rare in humans, but the risk level would change dramatically if the virus were to become more transmissible from person to person.
And scientists think H5N1, specifically the type spreading in cows right now, is just 1 mutation away from making that jump. And that could spark a pandemic. Nobody wants that again. But every infection is an opportunity for the virus to mutate. And this virus really likes being unpredictable.
It can change its genetic structure in a matter of days, if not even hours. It respects no borders, doesn't require a passport.
And it's getting a lot of opportunity to mutate.
Everything from cats, dogs, sea lions, and sheep after mingling with wild birds or eating raw pet food. At this lab, scientists have been testing Canadian birds all through the winter.
How often do you test for H5N1 here? So over the past few months, we've been testing it every single day.
And they're bracing for a whole lot more.
And now that the birds are coming back north for the migration, we don't really know what's coming.
The straight-up bird flu circulating in wild birds and poultry has been deadly in humans. A Louisiana senior died after being infected with that strain in January. In November, the same strain put a BC teenager in hospital for 2 months.
We do not want that virus to adapt to humans. So we all have a responsibility to shut that down.
That's why BC shared data about their case, like genomic sequencing, widely.
To ensure that researchers worldwide would be able to interrogate that virus, find its weak spots, and find how we need to adapt, adjust, make sure that we are doing what we need to contain it.
That's why it's crucial that scientists around the world share data quickly as the situation evolves. Which brings us to number 2, watch how well the US cooperates with other countries and the World Health Organization when it comes to bird flu. We depend on the US to curb the spread of bird flu. Because birds fly between our 2 countries, we work with each other to monitor flyways. We tell each other about mutations of concern, and we tell each other about the locations of infected animals.
There is a substantial amount of disease threat and change going on in the US itself right now. And the ability to track and monitor these things and understand them really depends on that goodwill to be open and proactively engaged in the international arena.
But it's a volatile time for American scientists and for America's role in global health.
There have been funding and job cuts at key agencies like the National Institutes of Health. The Trump administration also accidentally fired employees tied to bird flu response as part of Elon Musk's sweeping purge of the federal workforce. Now they're scrambling to hire them back. Plus, there's this.
What is this? Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir?
Ooh, that's a big one.
In the past, it was a given. If a dangerous pathogen pops up anywhere in the world, the US would act quickly to get the latest information about it and share it with others at the WHO, part of a global effort to curb the spread. But now,
by pulling out of WHO, we will begin to lose that ability.
The good news, the US has been picking up our calls on bird flu so far.
We have had actual reporting from the United States. So when they have a human case, for example, we are getting the information from them.
And there are multiple sources of information. American academics, top players in their field, are still talking to colleagues around the world, as are some American states with provincial counterparts. The hope is that whatever happens with the Trump administration, those experts will continue talking.
Number 3, watch how hard Canadian poultry farms are getting hit. The virus has decimated huge flocks of chickens in the US. The fear is that it'll do that here in Canada too.
As soon as you have 1 or 2 chickens or hens becoming infected and showing clinical signs, and then they're tested positive, then the entire flock would have to be depopulated.
One of the most noticeable ways bird flu is hitting Americans, the price of eggs, which have ballooned up to $10 a dozen in some cities. But here in Canada, we have supply management, and our industry operates differently.
We have a lot of farms with small number of birds in them.
And so the repercussions might look different. American egg farmers have been imploring the Department of Agriculture to let them use a vaccine to protect laying hens, but the US hasn't. They're worried it could disrupt export. France did start vaccinating ducks in 2023. Producers there say it's helped the industry bounce back.
If the virus hits Canadian poultry farms as hard as it's been hitting American poultry farms, we might have to consider similar measures. And finally, number 4, watch for more signs that Canada is bracing for bird flu infections in humans. In February, Canada bought a store of H5N1 vaccines, and scientists at the BC Centre for Disease Control are working on developing wastewater and antibody tests.
It's a matter of when, not so much if, when avian influenza will affect humans and potentially with transmission. And so our job, our goal is to be able to track it, make sure that we understand when it's in our environment, and also be able to understand when it affects humans.
It's hard to track transmissions, and we still don't know where that BC teen got infected.
It's so important for us to have that awareness, to have the ability to do the rapid testing, to have the whole genome sequencing that helps us connect the dots of where these viruses come from and who's getting infected and how it's spreading from place to place.
It's all information that could be critical for decision makers should the virus become more transmissible between people.
And Jennifer, it sounds like public health authorities are preparing in the event there's another pandemic.
Yeah, and I know, Ian, this is the last thing people want to think about, but as we've learned from COVID-19, viruses don't care much about our convenience, which is why public health authorities are preparing now to make sure that Canadian surveillance is strong enough to keep a close eye on bird flu in the event the Americans limit their communications with Canada and the rest of the world as they pull out of the World Health Organization.
Jennifer Yoon in Toronto tonight. Thank you. As the election campaign enters its second week, we're taking the national conversation to battleground Brampton, Ontario. David Common spoke to voters in the rapidly growing city about what's driving their decision.
So they call that a special high-grade zinc. It is primarily sourced from Canada, from BC and Montreal area.
And there it is.
Yes, that's it.
If you drive a car, wear makeup, put on sunscreen or diaper cream, there's a pretty good chance some part of it came from right here. Zochem makes zinc oxide, one of the only places in Canada to do so.
Not a fan of the industrial carbon tax.
Would that issue decide the election for you?
For me, that would be a prominent point, because if there's an industrial carbon tax, that is a cost, and if you're going to pass that on, that's still built into a cost that the end user has to pay. Why not remove that, and we can move forward and we can actually reduce our price.
You can catch Full Story Monday when Adrian will be on the road, taking the National to Brampton, Ontario, sharing what's top of mind for voters there. Coming up, local celebrity Wilson the Goose makes a triumphant return to the wild.
It was all of these people working together that brought Wilson to this point.
The wild goose chase with a happy ending is next in our moment. This is Wilson the Canada Goose. He was recently on the moment when that arrow was successfully removed. Now, nearly 10 months after he was first spotted, Wilson has finally been released, and tonight, at Taste of Freedom, is our moment.
I'm so happy right now, I can't even explain it. He got out of the cage, took a couple steps, and it flew over to a bunch of other geese that were hanging out over by the bush. I seen the goose in July of last year, and he had the arrow in his butt, and we followed him for almost 7 months before he was finally captured. He was taken down to Adrian Walton. They got the arrow out, and he's been over at Mars at Comox for 10 weeks. So all total, it's been almost 10 months total. I opened up the cage and I asked him if he remembers me, and he hissed at me.
Hi, Wilson. Remember me?
He's been through a lot, a poor guy.
The only thing I did through this whole ordeal is actually just pull the darn thing out. But it was a team effort with everybody from across the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island. This is not just one person. This isn't just one bird. This is a community that came together for Wilson.
It was awesome. It was a great ending.
The arrow that was embedded in Wilson was a target arrow, which I'm told is for target shooting, not hunting. So the vet who worked on Wilson says no matter how you feel about geese, you shouldn't be using them for target practice. Thank you for being with us. You can watch The National on the free CBC News app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing in Vancouver. I hope you can join me this week on CBC News Network each night at 7 Eastern.